December 17th, 1944, 0800 hours, Bullingen, Belgium. SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper stood in the town square, watching his men refuel his tanks. American tanks. American fuel. American jerry cans being poured into German panzers at gunpoint while American prisoners of war worked the pumps. Peiper commanded Kampfgruppe Peiper, the spearhead unit of the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, 4,800 men, 117 tanks and assault guns. His mission was simple. Punch through American lines, race west, reach the Meuse River, take the bridges, split the Allied armies in two. The offensive had begun 30 hours earlier. Hitler called it Operation Watch on the Rhine. The largest German attack in the West since 1940, 3 armies, 250,000 men, 1,400 tanks and assault guns. The goal was Antwerp. Cut off the British and Canadian armies. Force the Americans to Brumminthem and Tickhain. Negotiate. Change the course of the war. But there was a problem. Fuel. The German High Command had allocated 5 million gallons of gasoline for the entire offensive. Basic calculations said the panzers needed twice that to reach Antwerp. The planners knew this. Their solution was simple. Capture American fuel depots. Take what you need. Keep moving. Peiper's divisional intelligence officer had given him a map before the attack. The map showed American supply installations, fuel dumps, ammunition depots, supply points. The intelligence was accurate. The Americans had supplies everywhere. The question was whether the Germans could capture them before the Americans destroyed them. Bullingen was the first test. Peiper's Kampfgruppe had taken the town at 0730 that morning. The Americans had retreated so quickly, they left everything behind. Fuel depot intact, 50,000 gallons. Enough to refuel Peiper's entire spearhead and keep moving west. American prisoners were Engines-Rathing, doing the work. Peiper had ordered it. His own men were exhausted. They had been fighting for 36 hours straight. Let the Americans pump their own fuel into German tanks. It was efficient. It was also humiliating for the prisoners, which Peiper considered a useful psychological weapon. The fuel was flowing. Peiper watched the jerrycans being passed hand to hand. Each can held 5 gallons, 10 cans per tank. Multiply by 100 tanks, 5,000 gallons. It would take hours to refuel everything, hours Peiper did not have. Every minute stopped was a minute the Americans could use to organize their defense. But without fuel, the panzers were useless. Steel boxes on treads. Peiper had learned that lesson on the Eastern Front. The best tank in the world meant nothing with an empty gas tank. The Wehrmacht had lost more vehicles to fuel shortages than to Soviet action in 1943. Entire divisions immobilized. Tanks abandoned. Positions overrun because the Action Dome. Panzers could not move. Now here in Belgium, the same problem. German logistics had collapsed. The fuel allocated for the offensive was stuck somewhere behind the lines. Traffic jams. Bombed roads. American fighter bombers attacking anything that moved during daylight. The supply trucks were not coming, which meant Peiper had to capture American fuel or stop advancing. One of his officers, Hauptsturmführer Gerd Neuski, walked over. Neuski was Peiper's personal staff officer. He had been with Peiper since France. Good officer, reliable. Neuski reported that the fuel situation was worse than expected. The 50,000 gallons at Bullingen would get them to Stavelot. Maybe. After that, they would need more. Peiper already knew that. His intelligence map showed another depot at Stavelot, larger than Bullingen. The Americans would probably defend it or destroy it. Either way, Peiper had to reach it. Fast. The refueling continued. Peiper walked through the captured depot. American. Supplies stacked everywhere. Ammunition crates, medical supplies, rations, winter clothing, everything organized, everything labeled, everything abundant. He picked up one of the ration boxes. Small cardboard container. Brown. Waterproof coating. The label said K-Ration. Meal. Combat. Individual. Breakfast unit. Paper opened it. Inside was a can of chopped ham and eggs, hard biscuits, a chocolate bar, 4 cigarettes, instant coffee, sugar tablets, chewing gum, a wooden spoon, matches, toilet paper, can opener, everything a soldier needed for one meal, packaged in a box the size of a book, weight less than 1 pound, no cooking required, no field kitchen needed, just open and eat. Piper had commanded combat units since 1940. He knew what German soldiers received as rations. The standard German field ration, when it arrived at all, required cooking. It came in bulk containers that needed field kitchens to prepare. The bread was hard, the meat was mostly fat, the quality had been declining since 1943. By late 1944, frontline units were lucky to receive anything. Piper's own Kampfgruppe had left Germany with 3 days of rations. Those rations were gone. His men had been eating whatever they could find. Captured American food. Food taken from Belgian civilians. Some units had slaughtered horses. He looked at the K-ration box in his hand. The manufacture date stamped on the bottom said October 1944, 2 months old. The Americans were producing these rations so recently that supplies manufactured weeks ago were already at the front. His staff officer Neuski came over. Paper handed him the K-ration box. Neuski opened the ham and eggs can and ate it cold. His face showed surprise. The food was good, better than anything German soldiers had eaten in months. Neuski looked at the other items in the box. Real coffee, real chocolate, American cigarettes, even the small luxuries, matches, toilet paper, gum. Piper said nothing. He was doing calculations in his head. If every American soldier received 3 of these boxes per day, that was 3 meals. If there were 10 million American soldiers worldwide, that meant 30 million individual meal boxes every day, 900 million per month. The industrial capacity required to produce that number was staggering. Germany had never produced anything on that scale. The entire German armaments industry had been mobilized for total war since 1939. They produced tanks, aircraft, ammunition, but they could not produce enough food to feed their own soldiers properly. And here the Americans were packaging individual meals in waterproof boxes with luxuries like chewing gum. Neuski pointed out something else. The depot had hundreds of these boxes, maybe thousands, and this was just one supply point in one small town. How many depots did the Americans have? How much food? How much of everything? Paper had fought the Soviets in the East. He had seen Soviet logistics, mass production, crude but effective, endless columns of trucks, factories in the Urals beyond German reach. The Soviets could replace losses faster than Germany could inflict them. But Soviet logistics looked primitive compared to this. The Soviets moved supplies in bulk. The Americans packaged everything individually. The Soviets used quantity. The Americans used quantity and quality. Every item Piper examined showed careful engineering, waterproof packaging, compact design, long shelf life. This was not emergency improvisation. This was industrial planning. An SS Sturmbannführer named Werner Poetschky arrived. Poetschky commanded what remained of 1st SS Panzer Battalion. He had lost tanks during the advance and needed resupply. His battalion was running low on fuel and ammunition. Paper told him the fuel was being distributed now. Ammunition would come from captured American stocks. They had found crates of American 75mm shells that fit German guns. Take what you need. Keep moving. Poetschka asked about food. His men had not eaten since yesterday. Paper pointed to the rations. American K-Rations. Take as many as you need. The men should eat now and carry more. There was no telling when the next supply opportunity would come. Poetschka picked up several boxes and distributed them to his tank crews. The men opened the boxes and ate. Paper watched them, experienced soldiers, veterans of France and Russia. They were eating American emergency field rations and treating them like feast food, because compared to what they normally received, it was. The refueling finished at 09:30. Paper gave the order to move out. The Kampfgruppe formed into march column. Tanks first. Half-tracks next, support vehicles last. The column stretched for several kilometers. Paper's command vehicle took position near the front. The route led northwest towards Stavelot, 14 kilometers, maybe 20 minutes at speed on good roads. But the roads were not good. Mud, refugees, destroyed vehicles. The Americans were retreating but fighting. Every village had to be cleared. Every bridge had to be checked for demolitions. Paper's intelligence map showed a major fuel depot at Stavelot, larger than Bullingen. The map indicated the depot was near the town but did not show the exact location. Paper assumed it would be obvious. Supply depots were large installations. Vehicles. Storage tanks. You could not hide something that big. The Kampfgruppe reached Stavelot at 1200 hours. The town sat on both sides of the Omblave River. Stone bridge in the center. American forces were defending the bridge. Paper's lead tanks engaged them. The Americans had anti-tank guns and were fighting hard. The battle for Stavelot lasted 3 hours. Piper's forces eventually forced the Americans back across the river. German engineers checked the bridge, not demolished. Intact. The Americans had tried to blow it, but the charges failed to detonate. Lucky. Without that bridge, the entire advance would stop. Paper's units crossed the bridge and entered the western part of Stavelot. They searched for the fuel depot. Intelligence said it was here. Near the town. Large quantities. Enough fuel to keep the offensive moving for days. They found nothing. Paper sent reconnaissance teams in all directions. Check the outskirts. Check the roads. Check every building. The fuel depot had to be somewhere. The Americans would not abandon 3 million gallons of gasoline. They would either defend it or destroy it. But Piper's men found no evidence of either. At 1500 hours, one of his reconnaissance officers reported finding American supply dumps north of the town, small amounts, jerry cans scattered along the roads, maybe a few thousand gallons total, not the major depot, not what intelligence had promised. Paper made a decision. The fuel depot either did not exist or the Americans had already evacuated it. Either way, he could not wait. His Kampfgruppe had enough fuel to continue the advance. Not much, but enough. The mission was to reach the Meuse River. Every hour stopped was an hour wasted. Move on. The Kampfgruppe departed Stavelot at 1600 hours and continued west. Behind them, American engineers moved back into position. They had been watching from the hills. Once the Germans passed, they secured the bridge approaches. Stavelot would not fall completely. The Americans would hold positions south of the river. What Paper did not know was that the fuel depot existed. It was there. 3,200,000 gallons of gasoline, stored in 5-gallon jerry cans, stacked along a 5-mile stretch of road. Depot number 2 and depot number 3, located 800 feet north of the road Paper had used to approach Stavelot, 300 yards away. Paper had driven past 3 million gallons of fuel and never saw it. The Americans had not hidden the depot. They had not camouflaged it. The jerry cans were stacked in plain sight along the roadside. Thousands of them, millions of gallons, right there. But Piper expected a fuel depot to look like German depots looked. Storage tanks, buildings, vehicles, infrastructure. The American depot was just jerry cans, stacked, waiting, no guards, no vehicles, no buildings, just fuel in portable containers ready to be distributed wherever needed. Paper rolled past it, looking for something that looked like a depot. He never found it because he was looking for the wrong thing. After the war, an American historian named Major Ken Heckler interviewed Piper. Heckler told Paper about the depot. 3 million gallons, 300 yards from your route. Piper shrugged. He said he expected fuel to be piled in town squares like at Bullingen. When he did not find it in Stavelot, he assumed the Americans had moved it. That missed depot changed everything. With 3 million gallons, Piper could have refueled his entire Kampfgruppe multiple times. He could have refueled other German units. He could have kept the offensive moving. The fuel crisis that eventually stopped the German advance would not have existed, but Piper never found it. and without fuel, his advance was doomed. December 21st, 1944. Stoumont, Belgium. Major Hal McCown crouched in a cellar listening to German tanks surrounding his position. McCown commanded 2nd Battalion, 119th Infantry Regiment, 30th Infantry Division. His battalion had been fighting Paper's Kampfgruppe for 3 days. Now they were cut off. The situation was deteriorating fast. German armor was everywhere. American defensive positions were collapsing. McCown's radio operator reported that German forces had broken through to the south. The battalion was surrounded. At 14:30 hours, German infantry stormed McCown's command post. Short firefight. 1. American killed. McCown and several of his staff were captured. The Germans searched them for weapons and intelligence documents. Took their personal items. Watches. Cigarettes. Anything valuable. McCown was taken to a stone house on the edge of Stoumont, Piper's command post. The house was damaged, windows broken, walls pockmarked with bullet holes. Inside, German officers were studying maps and coordinating defensive positions, because by December 21st, Piper's offensive had stopped. His Kampfgruppe was surrounded. No fuel, no ammunition, no supplies, no way forward, no way back. Piper was standing near a map table, tall, thin, 30 years old, aristocratic features, spoke perfect English. He saw McCown and walked over. They were the same rank, 2 battalion commanders, 1 German, 1 American, both professional soldiers. Piper introduced himself, asked McCown's name, unit, position. McCown gave the required information under Geneva Convention. Name, rank, serial, 2 number. Paper did not press for more. He seemed more interested in talking than interrogating. That night, Paper and McCown talked for 7 hours. From 2300 hours until 0500 hours the next morning, they sat in a room with maps and talked about the war. Piper did most of the talking. McCown mostly listened. Paper defended Nazism, explained why Germany was fighting, justified German actions. McCown later said he had met few men who impressed him in so short a time. Paper was intelligent, educated, articulate, completely confident that Germany would win, even surrounded, even out of fuel. Even with his Kampfgruppe disintegrating, Paper believed Germany would win. McCown spent 3 days with Kampfgruppe Piper. He observed everything: German supply conditions, morale, equipment, food, medical care. He made mental notes because he knew this information would be valuable. What McCown saw contradicted what Paper said. Paper claimed Germany was winning, but the evidence showed Germany was losing. German soldiers looked exhausted. They had been fighting for 5 days straight with minimal rest. Many wore parts of American uniforms, knit caps, gloves, sweaters, overshoes, even overcoats. They were wearing enemy clothing because their own logistics system could not provide adequate winter gear. The physical condition of the men was generally good. No starvation, no obvious malnutrition. But they were not eating well. German rations were scarce. Most men were eating captured American food. K-Rations, C-Rations, 10-in-1 rations. Whatever they had taken from overrun American positions, McCown watched German soldiers open American ration boxes. They examined the contents like children examining presents: chocolate bars, real coffee, cigarettes. The small luxuries that American soldiers took for granted were precious to German troops who had not seen such things in months. One German soldier showed McCown a can of ham from a K-ration. The soldier said it was better than anything the Wehrmacht issued. The German army's canned meat was mostly fat and gristle, required cooking, tasted bad. This American ham was real meat, preserved properly, edible cold. The soldier said if Germany could produce rations like this, the war would be different. McCown said nothing. He was a prisoner. Arguing was pointless, but he understood what the soldier meant. If Germany could produce rations like American rations, they would. The fact that they could not meant they lacked the industrial capacity. And if they lacked capacity to produce food, they lacked capacity to produce everything else that sustained modern warfare. German medical supplies were critically short. The aid station at Stoumont had no morphine, no sulfur drugs. Bandages were being reused. Wounded German soldiers screamed during treatment because there was nothing for pain. McCown saw amputations performed with minimal anesthesia, men biting leather straps, held down by comrades. Sawing through bone while the patient was conscious, American medical practice would consider that medieval. American aid stations had morphine, sulfur drugs, proper bandages, sterile instruments. American wounded received pain relief, antibiotics for infection, professional care. The Germans were improvising with inadequate supplies and doing the best they could, but their best was far below American standards. On December 22nd, the Luftwaffe attempted an aerial resupply of Kampfgruppe paper. 6 planes, flying low, dropping supply canisters by parachute. The drop zone was supposed to be inside German lines. Most canisters missed. They fell outside the perimeter. American forces recovered them. German soldiers watched supply canisters land 200 yards away in American positions, unreachable. The aerial resupply was a complete failure. Paper's forces were now completely isolated, surrounded by American units. No fuel, no ammunition, dwindling. Food, no medical supplies, no way to evacuate wounded. 170 American prisoners, hundreds of German casualties. The situation was unsustainable. On December 23rd, Paper held a conference with his senior officers. McCown was present. He listened as German officers discussed their options. All options were bad. They could not advance. No fuel. They could not defend indefinitely. No ammunition. They could not retreat with vehicles. No fuel. They could attempt to break out on foot. Abandon everything. Tanks, half-tracks, vehicles, wounded who could not walk, American prisoners, everything. Paper made the decision. Break out on foot. Destroy the vehicles. Leave the wounded with American medical supplies. Release the American prisoners. March east through the forest. Try to reach German lines. It was the only option that gave his men any chance of survival. The breakout began at 0200 hours on December 24th. 800 German soldiers, moving through darkness, through snow, through forest, no vehicles, no heavy weapons, just small arms and whatever each man could carry. McCown escaped during the confusion. He made it back to American lines on December 25th. He filed an immediate after-action report. Everything he had seen. German supply conditions, equipment status, morale, food, situation, medical care. The report was detailed and accurate. McCown later testified at the Malmedy trial in June 1946. He appeared as a defense witness. He testified that Paper's men had treated him correctly under Geneva Convention. He described the conditions inside German lines, the supply failures, the desperation, the professionalism of German soldiers fighting with inadequate resources. McCown said one thing clearly. The Germans lost at Stoumont not because of American tactical superiority. They lost because they ran out of supplies. Fuel, ammunition, food, medical supplies. Everything. The Wehrmacht was an AT-day, army that could no longer sustain itself in combat. No logistics, no chance of victory. Paper abandoned 7 Tiger II tanks at L'Église, 50 medium tanks, 70 half-tracks, 135 vehicles. Everything immobilized because the fuel tanks were empty. Some of the most advanced armored vehicles in the world, left behind, useless. The tanks were intact, functional, loaded with ammunition. But without gasoline, they were just metal sculptures. Belgian civilians later recovered the vehicles. Some were placed in museums. Visitors ask why the Germans left them behind. The answer is always the same. No fuel, the tanks could not move, the crews could not stay. so they were abandoned. January 1945. Prisoner of war camp, France. General Oberst Hasso von Manteuffel sat in an interrogation room, answering questions from American intelligence officers. Manteuffel commanded 5th Panzer Army during the Ardennes Offensive. Professional soldier, career officer, Eastern Front veteran. He had opposed the Ardennes plan from the beginning. The American officers asked detailed questions. What were German objectives? What resources were allocated? What went wrong? Manteuffel answered honestly. The war was over for him. No reason to lie. His answers would become foreign military studies manuscripts, official documents, historical record. Manteuffel explained that he and Field Marshal Model had argued against Hitler's plan. They wanted a limited offensive, smaller objectives, realistic goals. Hitler wanted Antwerp, cross the Meuse River, split the Allied armies, force negotiations. Hitler's plan was strategically impossible with available resources. The fuel allocation made success impossible. 5 million gallons for 3 armies, 1,400 tanks, thousands of vehicles. Basic mathematics showed it was insufficient. The planning assumed capturing American fuel depots. That assumption was a gamble. You cannot base military operations on inventie militaire, capturing enemy supplies. What if the Americans destroy the depots? What if you cannot find them? What if they defend them successfully? All 3 scenarios happened. Some depots were destroyed. Some were never found. Some were defended. The fuel crisis began immediately and never stopped. Manteuffel said his tank units were crying for fuel as early as December 19th. Second day of the offensive. Units were already running dry. Supply trucks were not reaching the front. Captured fuel was insufficient. The entire offensive was grinding to a halt because panzers sat immobilized, waiting for gasoline that never arrived. The American interrogators asked about German logistics in general. Manteuffel was frank. German logistics had collapsed. Not just during the Ardennes offensive, the entire system. Since 1943, maybe earlier, the Eastern Front destroyed German logistics. The distances were too great. The roads were too poor. The Soviet resistance was too strong. German trucks broke down faster than they could be repaired. Railways were constantly under attack. The Wehrmacht became dependent on horses, hundreds of thousands of horses, pulling supply wagons like in 1870. By late 1944, some German divisions had more horses than German divisions in World War I. Mechanized warfare fought with horse-drawn logistics. The contradiction was fatal. Tanks moved faster than horses. Panzers could advance 20 kilometers in an hour. Supply wagons needed a full day to cover the same distance. Combat units outran their logistics and then stopped, immobilized, waiting for supplies that arrived too late or not at all. The horse dependence created additional problems. Horses required food. Approximately 20 pounds of fodder per day per animal. A division with 5,000 horses needed 50 tons of horse feed daily just to sustain its logistics system. That feed had to be transported on roads already congested with military traffic. Horses also died. From exhaustion. From air attacks. From inadequate feed. Dead horses blocked roads and required burial or disposal. American logistics used trucks exclusively. Trucks did not require daily feeding. They sat idle when not needed without consuming resources. They moved faster, carried more, required less maintenance personnel than horse-drawn wagons. The American truck fleet numbered in hundreds of thousands, all standardized designs, all using interchangeable parts, all supported by massive spare parts supply system. Allied strategic bombing made everything worse. Every rail junction was a target. Every bridge was destroyed. Every road was strafed by fighter bombers. German logistics units could only move at night. Daylight movement meant certain death from the air. American P-47s and P-51s attacked anything that moved. Supply columns were burned. Fuel trucks were destroyed. Food convoys were shot up. German production could not replace. Losses. Factories were bombed. Raw materials were scarce. Skilled workers were conscripted into combat units. The industrial base was crumbling. What the factories did produce often could not reach the front because transportation networks were destroyed. Manteuffel contrasted this with American logistics. The Americans had secure supply lines. Factories in America were safe from bombing, 3,000 miles from the fighting. Producing war materials at rates Germany could never match. Ships crossed the Atlantic constantly, delivering supplies. The port of Antwerp alone handled more tonnage per month than all German ports combined. American supply depots were everywhere. Fuel, ammunition, food, spare parts, everything. Organized. Abundant. Redundant. Multiple depots meant losing one did not matter. Standardized containers meant soldiers could handle supplies without special training. Abundant production meant waste was acceptable if it increased speed of distribution. German. Logistics had no excess capacity. Every supply dump was critical. Every fuel truck was precious. Every ration was counted. The Wehrmacht operated on the edge of collapse constantly. One disruption meant crisis. 2 disruptions meant disaster. The American officers asked Manteuffel when he knew Germany would lose the war. Manteuffel said he knew in 1943 after Kursk. The Wehrmacht could still win battles, but winning battles was not enough. Germany needed to win the war. That required resources Germany did not have. Industrial capacity, oil, food, manpower, time. The Americans had all of those things. Functionally unlimited industrial capacity. Secure oil supplies from Texas and the Middle East. Agricultural production that fed both military and civilians. A population of 130 million. Time to mobilize that population and deploy it. Germany had lost the resource war before the shooting war ended. Once America entered the conflict, German defeat was inevitable. Not immediate, not easy, but inevitable. The mathematics were simple. America could produce more tanks, more planes, more bullets, more food, more everything than Germany could destroy. Eventually, American material superiority would grind German resistance into dust. The Ardennes offensive was a final desperate gamble. Use the last strategic reserves, achieve one dramatic victory, force the Allies to negotiate. Hitler believed will and courage could overcome material disadvantage. Manteuffel knew better, will and courage matter. But logistics matter more. An army without supplies cannot fight regardless of how brave its soldiers are. The offensive failed. German losses were catastrophic. 600 tanks destroyed or abandoned. 34,000 killed. 60,000 wounded or missing. The Wehrmacht's last mobile reserves were gone. After the Ardennes, Germany could only retreat. No more offensives, no more grand strategic plans, just fighting, delaying actions, until the inevitable end. Manteuffel was asked to write detailed reports on the Ardennes offensive. 5th Panzer Army operations. Planning, execution, lessons learned. He wrote 148 pages, then another 161 pages. Foreign Military Studies manuscripts B151 and B151A, Professional Military Analysis. Balanced assessments. Credit to American performance. Honest evaluation of German failures. His tone was clinical, detached, professional. He faulted German shortcomings. He credited Allied successes. No excuses. No propaganda, just factual analysis. This is what happened. This is why it happened. These were the mistakes. These were the consequences. Other German generals were less honest in their post-war statements. They blamed Hitler. They blamed weather. They blamed bad luck. They blamed everything except the fundamental problem. Germany lacked the industrial and logistical capacity to sustain modern warfare against opponents with superior resources. Manteuffel did not make excuses. He stated facts. Germany lost because Germany was outproduced, outsupplied, and outsustained. The German army in December 1944 was still capable of tactical excellence. But tactical excellence without strategic resources meant eventual defeat. The interrogation concluded. Manteuffel was returned to the prisoner compound. He would spend the next year in American custody, then release, then return to Germany, then a long post-war life. He lectured at West Point in 1968. He gave interviews for documentaries. He remained a professional soldier, providing honest analysis until his death. His legacy was his honesty. Unlike many German generals who rewrote history to excuse failures, Manteuffel told the truth. The Ardennes offensive failed because of logistics. The war was lost because of industrial capacity. No amount of tactical skill could overcome material disadvantage. February 1940, 6. Nuremberg, Germany. SS Oberstgruppenführer Josef Dietrich sat in a cell waiting for his trial. Dietrich commanded 6th SS Panzer Army during the Ardennes offensive. Former butcher. Hitler's bodyguard. Promoted far beyond his competence. An American psychiatrist named Leon Goldensohn interviewed Dietrich. Goldensohn was documenting the psychological state of Nazi war criminals. He talked with Dietrich on February 28th. The conversation ranged across multiple topics: the war, National Socialism, the offensive, defeat. At one point, Dietrich made a sardonic comment about his army. He said, "We call ourselves the 6th Panzer Army because we have only got 6 panzers left." Dark humour. Gallows humour. But accurate. The offensive had destroyed his army. Losses were staggering, equipment gone, men dead or captured. What remained barely qualified as a functioning military unit. Dietrich was not a strategic thinker. Hermann Göring later said of him, "He is decent but stupid." He had at most the ability to command a division. Hitler had given him an army. The results were predictable. 6th Panzer Army was supposed to lead the main thrust. Instead, it bogged down immediately. Poor planning. Traffic jams. Fuel shortages. American resistance. Dietrich's army was allocated fuel for 90 to 100 miles of travel. The distance to Antwerp was 140 miles. Even if everything went perfectly, the fuel allocation was insufficient. The plan explicitly required capturing American gasoline depots. Without captured fuel, the offensive could not succeed. The entire operation was premised on taking enemy supplies. That dependency revealed German logistical bankruptcy. You cannot plan military operations around capturing enemy resources. It is desperation disguised as strategy. Professional officers like Manteuffel understood this. Political appointees like Dietrich did not. Goldensohn asked Dietrich about the offensive's failure. Dietrich blamed everything except logistics. He blamed American air power. He blamed weather. He blamed terrain. He blamed Hitler for unrealistic objectives, all valid criticisms. But he never mentioned that his army ran out of fuel because German logistics could not sustain the attack. After the war, analysis by both American and German military historians reached the same conclusion. The Ardennes offensive failed primarily due to logistics. Fuel shortages stopped the advance. Ammunition shortages. Limited artillery support. Food shortages degraded soldier effectiveness. Medical supply shortages meant wounded, died who could have been saved. German tactical performance was often excellent. Individual units fought well. Officers made good decisions with available resources. Soldiers showed courage and skill. But tactics cannot overcome logistics failures. An army without fuel cannot advance. An army without ammunition cannot attack. An army without food cannot sustain operations. The Americans won. The Battle of the Bulge, not primarily through superior tactics, but through superior logistics. They moved reinforcements faster than Germans advanced. They supplied defensive positions adequately. They replaced losses from reserves. They sustained operations through winter conditions that degraded German capabilities. American logistics in December 1944 was a mature system. 5 years of development. Massive infrastructure. Dedicated logistics units. Specialized vehicles. Standardized procedures. Supply depots positioned strategically across Europe. Transportation networks that moved supplies from American factories to frontline foxholes in weeks. April 1945. American Interrogation Center, Germany. Joachim Peiper sat across from American interrogators, answering questions about Kampfgruppe Peiper's operations. The war was ending. Germany was collapsing. Peiper would soon face war crimes charges for the Malmedy massacre. But for now, the Americans wanted information about tactical operations. Peiper described the offensive in detail. Planning, execution, problems encountered, decisions made. He was cooperative, professional. He answered questions accurately. No defiance, no evasion. Just factual responses from a soldier to other soldiers. The Americans asked about fuel. When did you run out? Where did you refuel? What depots did you capture? Peiper explained the fuel crisis. Bullingen provided 50,000 gallons, enough to reach Stavelot. But at Stavelot, he found no major depot. Small amounts scattered along roads, not enough. He continued west with minimal fuel, reached Stoumont, ran completely dry. An American officer asked if Peiper knew about the depot at Stavelot. 3 million gallons, 800 feet from your route. Peiper said he did not know. The interrogator showed him a map, pointed to the depot location, explained that thousands of jerrycans were stacked along that road, right there. Peiper passed within 300 yards. Peiper looked at the map for a long moment, then he shrugged, smiled slightly, said in English, "I am sorry." The interrogator asked why he missed it. Peiper explained he expected fuel to be concentrated in the town, piled in the square like at Bullingen. When he did not find it, he assumed the Americans had evacuated it. He never thought to look for jerrycans stacked along a roadside. The interrogator made notes. Peiper continued describing subsequent operations. The advance to Stoumont, the encirclement, the decision to break out on foot, the abandonment of all vehicles, the retreat through the forest back to German lines. Peiper never expressed regret about the missed depot. No emotion, no frustration. Just a tactical error explained in professional terms. He missed an opportunity. That happens in war. Move on. But that missed opportunity changed the battle. With 3 million gallons, Kampfgruppe Peiper could have refueled multiple times, could have continued, advancing, could have reached the Meuse River, could have achieved the breakthrough that was the offensive's objective. Or maybe not. Even with unlimited fuel, Peiper still faced American resistance. American air power once the weather cleared, American reinforcements moving faster than he could advance. Logistics was critical, but not everything. Fuel alone would not have won the battle, but it would have changed the outcome. The Germans would have advanced further, caused more casualties, captured more territory. The battle would have lasted longer. The strategic situation would have been different, all because Peiper drove past 3 million gallons of gasoline and never saw it. The depot was there. Visible, accessible, undefended. He passed within 300 yards, and missed it completely because he was looking for something that looked like a German depot. Organized infrastructure, buildings, guards. The American depot was just fuel, stacked, ready, waiting. No, infrastructure needed. That was American logistics. Simple, efficient, abundant. No wasted effort on structures that did not contribute to the mission. Just put the supplies where they are needed. Soldiers will figure out how to use them. German logistics was more complicated. Formal structures, designated supply points, official procedures. The system worked when everything functioned correctly, but it was fragile. Disrupt any part and the whole system failed. American logistics was resilient, redundant, flexible. Multiple depots meant losing one did not matter. Standardized containers meant soldiers could handle supplies without special training. Abundant production meant waste was acceptable if it increased speed of distribution. These were fundamental differences in approach. German logistics emphasized control and efficiency. American logistics emphasized abundance and speed. In a long war, the American approach won. The interrogation ended. Peiper was taken back to confinement. He would face trial, conviction, prison sentence, eventually release, long post-war life. Death in France in 1976, under mysterious circumstances. His military career was documented thoroughly, his tactical decisions analysed, his failures and successes recorded. The missed fuel depot at Stavelot remained his most consequential tactical error. Not a moral failing, not a war crime, just a mistake. He looked in the wrong place, assumed the wrong thing, missed an opportunity that could have changed the battle. That error symbolized the larger German failure. The Wehrmacht was looking for something that did not exist. They expected American logistics to work like German logistics. Concentrated depots, formal structures, predictable patterns. But American logistics was different, distributed, flexible, abundant. The K-Rations symbolized that system, not the reason America won, but a representation of why America won. 105 million K-Rations produced, in 1944 alone, each containing 2,830 calories across 3 individually packaged meals, manufactured in American factories, safe from bombing, shipped across the Atlantic, distributed to soldiers fighting on multiple continents simultaneously. German soldiers opened these boxes and saw food. They should have seen industrial capacity, transportation networks, an economic system that produced millions of meal packages monthly and delivered them anywhere needed. The small luxuries included chocolate and cigarettes and chewing gum, demonstrated excess capacity. America could afford to add non-essentials because their production was that abundant. German rations by 1944 reflected a failing system, inadequate nutrition, poor quality, irregular distribution, dependence on field kitchens that could not always operate. Everything reflected resource scarcity and industrial strain. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, Wehrmacht soldiers were starving, rations had collapsed, supply systems had disintegrated. Many German prisoners of war gained weight in American captivity because they received regular meals for the first time in months. One German prisoner said, "When I was captured, I weighed 128 pounds. After 2 years as an American prisoner of war, I weighed 185. I had gotten so fat you could no longer see my eyes." American prison camp rations were better than German combat rations. The Battle of the Bulge ended in January 1945. German forces withdrew to their starting positions. American forces counterattacked. By March, the Allies had crossed the Rhine. By April, they were surrounding Berlin. By May, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The Ardennes offensive consumed Germany's last strategic reserves without achieving strategic objectives. It delayed Allied advances by several weeks and inflicted casualties. But it did not change the war's outcome. The 10 units committed to the Ardennes were the best Germany had left. After the offensive, those units were gone, destroyed, scattered, incapable of sustained operations. American forces grew stronger in that same period. More divisions arrived from the United States. More equipment, more supplies. The logistics system continued functioning efficiently. When Germany surrendered, American forces in Europe were at peak strength and capability. Germany lost World War II because it could not sustain modern warfare against opponents with superior industrial and logistical capacity. Strategic errors and tactical mistakes contributed, but the fundamental disparity was economic. The United States and Soviet Union both possessed industrial economies capable of producing war materials faster than Germany could destroy them. Germany did not. That disparity determined the outcome. American logistics superiority extended beyond rations. Consider vehicle production. The United States manufactured 400,000 trucks during the war. Germany produced 140,000. American factories delivered 63,000 tanks. German factories delivered 46,000. But German tanks required more maintenance, more fuel, more spare parts. American tanks were simpler, more reliable, easier to maintain in field conditions. The gap widened in aircraft production. America built 300,000 military aircraft during the war. Germany built 120,000. American bombers struck German factories with impunity, while American fighters controlled European skies. German aircraft production declined throughout 1944, despite desperate efforts to increase output. Allied bombing destroyed factories faster than Germany could build new ones. German soldiers at the Battle of the Bulge understood this disparity. They saw American equipment abandoned intact because retreating forces had no time to destroy it. They captured American supply dumps containing more food and ammunition than they had seen in months. They wore American uniforms because German logistics could not deliver adequate winter clothing. Every interaction with captured American supplies reinforced the same lesson. The enemy had everything. Germany had nothing. That knowledge affected German combat effectiveness. Soldiers who know their side is losing fight differently than soldiers who believe victory is possible. German soldiers in December 1944 fought bravely. But bravery has limits when you are cold and hungry, and know that even if you win today's battle, tomorrow will bring more American soldiers with more American supplies. American soldiers had opposite expectations. They knew their logistics system worked. They knew if they were surrounded, supplies would be airdropped. They knew if their unit took casualties, replacements would arrive. They knew wounded would receive proper medical care. That confidence enabled sustained resistance even in desperate situations. The Battle of the Bulge demonstrated this repeatedly. American units surrounded at Bastogne received airdrops. American forces pushed back at St. Vith received reinforcements. American casualties were evacuated to hospitals with adequate medical supplies. The logistics system functioned under pressure. German logistics collapsed under the same pressure. By January 1945, the logistics differential had become absolute. German units abandoned vehicles for lack of fuel. American units had excess fuel stockpiled. German soldiers scrounged food from civilians. American soldiers received hot meals in field kitchens. German wounded lay in aid stations without morphine. American wounded received pain medication and antibiotics. The final months of the war confirmed what the Battle of the Bulge had demonstrated. Germany could not sustain military operations against an enemy with functioning logistics. As German supply lines disintegrated completely, Wehrmacht units surrendered en masse, not because they lacked courage or tactical skill, but because they lacked food, fuel, ammunition, and hope. When American forces entered Germany in 1945, they found a country whose infrastructure had been destroyed by strategic bombing. Factories were rubble, rail yards were craters, roads were impassable. The industrial base that had supported German military operations no longer existed. Meanwhile, American factories continued producing war materials at full capacity. The economic war had been decided long before the shooting stopped. The K-Ration encapsulated this reality in a form German soldiers could hold in their hands, a waterproof cardboard box containing 3 individually packaged meals with luxuries like chocolate and cigarettes, the manufacture date showing recent production, the sheer abundance visible in every captured American supply depot. This was not just food, this was proof of industrial capacity that Germany never possessed and by 1944 could never acquire. Logistics won the war, tactics mattered, strategy mattered, leadership mattered, but logistics provided the foundation enabling everything else. An army without adequate supplies cannot execute tactics regardless of how skilled its soldiers are, cannot implement strategy regardless of how brilliant its generals are, cannot sustain combat operations regardless of how motivated its troops are. Germany lost World War II because it could not sustain modern warfare against opponents with superior industrial and logistical capacity. The United States produced more of everything, delivered it faster, and sustained operations longer. The economic disparity made military outcome inevitable. The K-Ration did not cause American victory, but examining one in December 1944, German soldiers held evidence of why they were losing.